Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, Unlock Revenue with CRM Reports and Dashboards. If you are looking to drive better sales and more revenue, why not leverage your existing CRM data? Through Sugar's dashboards, analytics, and reporting capabilities, you can easily uncover previously hidden opportunities and achieve organizational goals. In this webinar, we will show you how to get more value from your existing CRM information by reporting on past and current sales performance to predict the future, effectively using reports and dashboards for sales, marketing, and service success, and building employee leaderboards and tracking team goals, as well as integrating ERP solutions such as Epicor to create a rich CRM environment. So with that, let's get started. So before I do jump into the introductions of all of our guests we have on the webinar today, I do want to take a look at what we are covering today with the agenda. So first, we will discuss how to use CRM dashboards effectively. Then we will go through marketing, sales, and service dashboards that all focus around revenue growth. And then with SugarCRM customer American Specialties as our guests on this webinar, we will have a conversation around how they leverage dashboards within their organization. And finally, at the end, we will open it up to a Q&A. So this is my favorite part. I would like to take a moment to do a few introductions. Today, you have 4 wonderful webinar hosts. First, I would like to introduce you to SugarCRM customer Avi Bar, National Sales Manager at American Specialties. And from Sugar, you have 3 hosts, Christian Wettre, SVP and GM Platform, Ellen True, Senior Director of Product Management, and my name is Sarah Friedlander Garcia, and I'm the Senior Director of Brand and Content Marketing. So with that, I'm now going to hand this over to Christian, where he'll introduce Avi as well as American Specialties.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Avi, for being a good sport and joining us here. I just want to point out that Avi Bar has been a customer of Sugar for a long time, and I consider him a good friend. We've been friends and worked together during this time. And he works for ASI. I'll let Avi say a couple of words about it, but I put together this slide as I was trying to describe our customer, ASI, and they make industrial, commercial bathroom components, and they make these really cool bathrooms, and that's kind of a nice thing to make bathrooms cool. So they have about 125 users of Sugar. And as Sarah said, they use Epicor as their ERP, and we're going to talk a little bit about how they blend both CRM data and Epicor data for effect and to help their users. But Avi, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Avi Bar. I am the National Sales Manager at ASI Group. Yeah, it's always interesting when people try to describe our careers. The easy way to say it is my career's in the toilet. So with that said, we've been a longtime fans of SugarCRM. I've been deploying SugarCRM instances before I came to ASI Group, reevaluated when we got here as the CRM of choice for us. And it's been certainly a journey and a good journey at that. And we continue to evolve not only our SugarCRM implementation, but also the more services that we get from Sugar sites such as Sugar Market. So we're big fans, and Chris and I have been working for many years together. So I concur, Chris, friends as well as colleagues.
Excellent. And then, so we're going to ask Avi about some of his dashboard and reporting practices, and he had a lot of good insights to do. And then, as Sarah mentioned, we have Ellen True with us, who's the product manager for SugarCell, and she's going to work with us to take you through what have we done recently in terms of reporting? How do you design good dashboards? What cool things do we have in the product that make kind of Sugar help with producing revenue like we promised in this webinar? So let's go through some words of wisdom about reporting in general and how to create dashboards. So when we think about dashboards, when I set out to try to describe, the value of dashboards. As we start off describing dashboards, how does that fit into CRM? And some of you might be familiar with the concept of a capability maturity model. That's often applied to processes inside an organization to see, how well are we getting ourselves organized into following a process and behaving like an organization rather than a bunch of scattered individuals. So in a maturity model, it kind of has these 5 rankings. So the first one is the initial stage of maturity, and it's often also described as the heroic stage. That's when a group of people get together and each one of them try their best they can to do something good. Usually a small organization is in this stage, a bunch of people working together, each trying their best to further the organization, but not particularly organized. At some point, as they grow, they realize that, we got to have some processes. We need to have some standard operating processes. And so the second stage of a maturity model is the repeatable process. When we have some repeatable processes, typically in CRM, that is when we have maybe pipeline or leads management processes defined, but only that. That's something we have in CRM. We have a process for it, and it's defined. Taking that further, once we've mastered that, and we spread those processes across the organization, across marketing, sales, and services, usually that's when we can say somebody is in stage 3. Most of our processes are defined. The next step is, which is kind of what we're talking about here, is the managed stage. And that's when we have deployed those processes, but we've also applied KPIs to measure how well are we doing in those processes. How well is our leads process working? How well is our sales opportunity process working? How well is our marketing campaigns working? How well is our service operations working? And we have KPIs defined for that. We might have reports for that. And that's when we typically see dashboards being really useful to kind of consolidate those dashboards and see all our KPIs that manages a specific process in a single dashboard. And we're going to try to show you some of those here today. The 5th stage, which is the highest form of organization, is when you have the processes, you have the KPIs, you have the dashboards, and you go and continuously tweak the processes to make them better based on the results that you're actually seeing. So these maturity models can be applied to many different things, but I think they can also be effectively applied to CRM, and all of us are at a certain stage in that. When I ran a maturity model once, the first time I did it, I was a little disappointed on how low on the stage I really was, but we kind of used it as a tool to get better. So next, let's talk a little bit about dashboards and some key concepts to think about when we're thinking about dashboards. So dashboards typically are really just a collection of various reports that we've consolidated so that we can easily see them. We can compare one report to another and quickly get a few different views on a particular process and consume it effectively. And it's useful because we tend to make a lot of reports, and Avi will speak to all the reports they probably have built at ASI over the years. Literally, we have customers that have built thousands and thousands of reports. And what happens is that you build them, you use them for a period of time, but they're easily forgotten. And to avoid that, the reports that are truly useful and need to stand the test of time, it's a good practice to take those, consolidate them on a topical dashboard, and put them there so that we can share some context together. When you're building those dashboards, it's important to think about the audience. It's useful to organize the reports on a dashboard for an intended audience. And typically that's towards an audience that has a level of responsibility in the organization. It could be the company executives that are looking for very high-level metrics and overviews. It could be managers of departments who are looking to run their departments. Or it could be for individual contributors who are looking to run themselves and basically what's my role and what do I need to focus on. Some key things to think about dashboards. Dashboards need to be relevant. They need to align to goals of the organization, goals of the department, goals of the individual. They should answer specific business questions. We shouldn't count things just because they're there in the application, in the CRM system. We need to, before we start building a report or a dashboard, think about the business question the user is looking to answer and critically evaluate, does the chart help me answer that business question? Am I wiser from looking at this chart than I was before? it should be easy to understand. It should be intuitive. Can you show this to a non-CRM expert, and can they kind of read this chart and understand what it's trying to convey? Can the reader take action on it? The purpose of dashboards and reports is for people to become aware of the processes. Are the processes working or not? So that means, is the report and the dashboard helping you take action to make your processes better, right? And we're going to show you some tools in this presentation that allows you to kind of drill down into information, drill down all the way so we can understand the underlying data for the report and take those kind of actions. Sometimes, reports are also used to stimulate a little bit of competition inside the teams. So for instance, in sales and marketing, it's often useful to be able to take a report and see how teams are comparing. How do we compare against other teams, other team members, or maybe just even historically? How do we compare this month versus last month, this quarter versus the previous quarter? For reports to be useful, they need to contain data that people trust. So when anybody looks at a report for the first time, they might look at it with a little bit of skeptical eye and say, where's this data coming from? Like, how old is this data? And working with your audience to make sure they understand the process of gathering the data for the report, how timely it is, how recent it is also an important part of the process to build trust. And then as you build reports and distribute them out on dashboards, you're not done. You need to test them. You need to test them with your audience. You need to make sure that the business users you're giving them to understand them, that they are truly aligned to the goals, that they're intuitive, that they can take actions. You need to test that all those things you did actually have turned into reality and are useful to your audience. So those are some things that, preparing this webinar, we were just reviewing how we think about reports. Some things I think it's really worthwhile to remember. But we're lucky to have Avi here, who's done a lot of this, and he, as I said, runs a team of over 100 users who are doing good work for ASI and are using reports. So let's maybe ask Avi, like, what are some of the things that you've learned over the years? Like when you set up to do dashboards and put reports on those dashboards, what do you think about? What have you learned that's useful?
I think the first thing that I learned is that what we thought are good ideas aren't necessarily good ideas, and you have to be ready to pivot and change. When we first started building out reports and then turning those into dashboards, we thought these are the things we want to measure and these are the things we want to manage. And over time, we learned not all our good ideas were great ideas. For example, we initially wanted to measure and track our engagement with our influencer groups. And so every time somebody logged a call, a meeting, any interaction or an email, it would give them a score and the scores would add up. And that was a competitive dashboard that we would have for our users. But what we realized is that not everybody used it in the same way. Not everybody entered the data the right way. And so then we had an inconsistency of the data. So when you talk about the need to trust the data, there has to be a consistency in the process that's very, very critical, that makes a dashboard what it is. And so we had to be ready to abandon that dashboard as an example. But coming back, I think from a very, very high level, you have to just do some introspection and think strategically. What is it we really want to measure? What is it we really want to do? And who needs what piece of information in order to manage either themselves, their teams, their sub-teams? And you have to build that out. We also learned very quickly that data overload, it can lead to paralysis. If there's too many dashboards, if you build, you could build dashboards upon dashboards and reports upon reports. And we very, very quickly realized you got to pare it down. There's only so much data people can really consume, and there's only so many KPIs people can really manage. That was a big lesson we learned early on, because we started off pretty ambitious and had to revisit all the dashboards that we did. Those are some of the things I think the biggest, if we take a look and say why dashboards as a whole, when we work with our teams, and like I said, we have 28 territories around the country, 18 agencies that report up to me. So it's a fairly large number of people, and we needed to have a single source of truth that when we got into a meeting and we talked about success or failure or areas to improve or opportunities for us to pivot our strategy, we all needed to be talking about the same baseline and make sure that we agreed on what those baseline numbers are, whether they were sales numbers or KPIs. It was really important for us to have a common single source of truth, and the dashboards became our single source of truth. If we had a KPI that we were measuring, we said, these are the 5 KPIs we're measuring, these are the sales numbers that are critical to us and that we care about. We're going to measure these things. Everybody's going to have live visibility of it at all times, so that when we meet on a monthly or quarterly basis, there's no discrepancy or discussion as to what we're talking about. Everybody can come to the meeting and not negotiate about the truth of the numbers, but we're actually talking about what we can do about improving the results. So I think starting at a strategic high level, making sure that you understand what are the critical pieces of information that everybody needs to be aligned around, and then building those dashboards out. And like you said, test them. We constantly talk to our users and say, does this make sense? Does this add value to what you do? And how do you interact with them? And then you have to make sure that you revisit the dashboards. I liken it to having a task list. It's very easy to sit down and make a big task list of all the things you need to get done. If you never look at it, it's useless. And if you never cross them off or act on it, it's also useless. So having a dashboard is one thing. You have to interact and use the dashboard for value. So I don't know if that helps, but some ideas out there.
Yeah, no, I think that's really useful. I think especially, using the dashboard as a way to present a shared understanding of a group of interested people. That basically, this is where we place our shared understanding in the form of reports onto a dashboard, and people go to it and use it, and that's where they get that understanding. I think that's really useful. And the whole process of launching the dashboard, but then expecting that it has a certain lifespan, just like knowledge documents and manuals and documentation in general. It's not launched and expected to live forever and be perfect. Once in a while, it has to be revisited for relevancy. Like once a year or so, we need to go and look at this dashboard and say, wait a minute, is it still as relevant today that it was when we designed it a year ago? And maybe our processes changed? Especially in sales and marketing, processes tend to change fairly quickly. And you need to go back to those dashboards and make sure they stay pace. So, excellent. So, thank you for that, Avi. We're going to come back to you and talk a little bit about the results that you achieved. But now we're going to go and look at the product itself, the SugarCell and Serve platform that has evolved quite a bit over this year. We went on to a journey this year of refreshing how our reports look, how our dashboards behave. We're not completely done with that journey. We still have some more releases for the next couple of quarters that have even more cool stuff coming. But we're going to show you where we are, give a little bit of preview into the future, but talk about how to best deploy Sugar for dashboarding and reporting. So with that, we're going to start with some sample dashboards. Let's talk about the capabilities first. So we're going to go through these capabilities in some examples. So first of all, we're going to go through the concept of homepage dashboards in Sugar and how those tend to look and how they should be organized. We're going to talk about the concept of drill down, like we mentioned earlier, the concept of being able to look at a dashboard and drill down into the details and take those actions we promised. We're going to talk about the updated user interface that we've been deploying this year. I personally believe that dashboards needs to be pretty. You kind of have to get you at hello. They have to look nice, and by looking nice, it's something that you want to engage with. Leaderboard charts where we could show which campaigns or channels are effective, the most effective, is very powerful, and we've introduced some improvements there recently. We need to have engaging visualization types. So we need to have ways of visualizing information that's intuitive, and we're going to try to highlight some of that. And then We also have to realize that not all our audiences are always in Sugar. And we are going to also show that we can share information outside of Sugar through emails and distributing charts. So let's go into those sample dashboards. So first, let's talk about a marketing dashboard. We're going to zoom in on this a little bit more, but I want to first just talk about some business questions. So we establish an audience. So it's usually a good practice to take a dashboard and build it for a single audience. Like Avi said earlier, don't stuff it too full of too many reports and KPI. Pick a few relevant KPIs for that specific audience and put it on a dashboard. So here we're going to show a marketing dashboard. We're going to show it with maybe 4 or so KPIs, but I think it's a reasonable thing. And we want to answer some business questions. A business user looking at a marketing dashboard wants to know, where are my leads coming from? Which of my campaigns are performing best? What are top performing channels of communications? And how are these channels and campaigns driving sales opportunities and bookings into the business? That's what a marketing manager wants to understand. That's what a sales manager looking at their marketing services would like to understand. So let's look at what tools do we have for that. And Ellen's going to take us through a marketing dashboard.
Yep, so let's go ahead and zoom in on that dashboard. And for those of you who are already Sugar users, you'll notice this looks different. So what you're seeing is a sneak peek of a redesigned navigation that's coming in January, that nice blue bar on the left. For everybody here, I hope we can all agree that this is a pleasure to look at. So this is the pretty that Christian needs, right? This is inviting, it's modern, it's crisp. And that really does more than just bring you to the CRM. I think it helps you understand the information that the charts are showing. So this is a great overview, but sometimes you need to dig deeper for that next level of information. So I think when you're building your dashboards, you want to think about layers of discovery for your users, right? This is a summary, but if we were to click here on a segment of our chart, a drawer is open. And so here we've clicked on that first segment, and what you're able to see is a drawer coming down, and here's a list of actual accounts that are coming from that particular campaign. So from here you can click around and view the list of the details of what's coming from each of these campaigns. And click one more time for me. You can also use focus drawers to drill in one more level. So you're able to open this focus drawer from that icon on the left and look at information just about that particular account. Go one back for me. So here we're using our focus drawer. And what's interesting is we've moved from the home dashboard, which has summary insights across your business, to a different kind of dashboard. This one is looking at just the particular account, Glover Incorporated, right? And so we're seeing details about this particular account, and we can even show reports like that one at the bottom. This is showing support activity over time. It could be any report. So you can see how you can just continue drilling infinitely, all without leaving that original context. So back to that original goal of digging into the nuances of channel and campaign performance so we can optimize pipeline gen.
So we started from a dashboard, we had a specific chart, we drilled into that, we saw a list of results from a specific segment on a chart, and then from that we picked a specific record in that segment, and then we saw a whole dashboard just about that, where we see all this additional detail so that we can truly find out what's caused this chart to look the way it did, and what action is it natural to take on it, and actually take that action right here on this screen. Okay, so we went through a couple of things. So now let's look at what would this look like if you're a sales leader, for instance. And sales leader could be an executive sales leader, it could be a departmental sales leader, a team leader. And I like to also think about the individual sales rep as in business for themselves, and they're a leader of themselves, and they need to see a lot of this information too. So, but in terms of if you're leading a team, you might want to see which reps are performing highest and lowest, so they can go in and do some more corrective actions. So you can train somebody or help somebody coach them into kind of expected behavior. So for that, we want to show off leadership charts, and we'll do that in a second. But we talked to Avi about sometimes it's useful to integrate ERP data. So when we're integrating ERP data, especially for a manufacturer like ASI, we tend to have a lot of products in our product catalog. And those products all behave differently, and they have different revenue numbers attached to them. So we might want to see, for instance, bookings by product. And then we also, like Avi said, we have different sales territories. You had the 20-something sales territories that you worked with, Avi, and how are they performing? So let's see if we can produce a dashboard that answers some of those questions.
Yeah, and so we frequently look at our sales by product categories and by territories, and we like to dissect the data and the information by different dimensions, if you will. I think when you look at the same information from different angles, you're going to see different perspectives on it, and that will allow you to make some really good data-driven business decisions. But I'll cover that a little later.
Yeah, you see that we are using that leaderboard sort. So this is a new capability, and it's super powerful. So you can see this is a great way to show management how sellers or different portions of your business, different products are performing. And then back to Christian's point, we're not just here to serve leadership. This is also a great motivational team for sellers and teams themselves. So tapping into their competitive nature. We know that gamification can be just a powerful motivator and help keep teams focused on the right KPIs.
Avi brought up an interesting point when we were preparing for this presentation too, is that while you might be tempted to use leaderboards to show performance across individuals, that is something that when ASI went to do it, they realized you have to be kind of judicious about doing that. You have to be careful about stacking people up against each other. Because it might have, unintended consequences and perceptions between who's viewing the data.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, Christian, certain data works really well for gamification, and I think it's also depends on where and how the team looks. If there's a very broad distribution of performances, sometimes being at the bottom may be a disincentive, and saying that, it's learned helplessness. I'm at the bottom, I'm never going to get caught up. And if you're at the top, it may induce some complacency. Oh, I'm at the top, I'm far ahead. So I think you have to always weigh very carefully, what type of data you're sharing, and that it's not sensitive to their personal potential income. There's also some sensitivities there, but also that not the nature of the way that the data looks might not lend itself well to gamification. But in other elements, it turns out to be very, very powerful tool. So I think it's about using it judiciously.
I also think there's an element of, having up the same leaderboard for 3 years in a row can become quite demoralizing. But if we're doing Shark Week and it's a targeted case where anybody can win this, it's 1 week, right? I think that there's a nice tool there. Okay, so on this slide, what we're looking at is one of those visualization types that Christian pointed out earlier. This is the tree chart style. So it's a really good style for when you have a lot of data points. In this case, we're looking at product bookings. And you want to understand sort of the relative to performance. So that's what the size of the box corresponds to. Traditionally, you would probably do this in a pie chart. But if you can all imagine trying to look at this in a pie chart, it wouldn't be readable. And you certainly wouldn't be able to see any of the smaller segments that are on the right. So using tree map just gives you a really nice visual way to see that extra level of detail. If you go to the next slide, while we're talking about seeing details, as beautiful as all these charts are, sometimes you just need to see the numbers. So at the bottom of this dashboard, we're displaying the data table itself. So you can get that level of granularity. This is basically a pivot chart right from your dashboard without having to navigate anywhere else.
And working with sales leaders for many, many years, I found it useful to ask the sales leader, how do they prefer to see information? Some people like charts, but other people just want to see the numbers. And it's useful to understand your audience, make sure you know their individual preferences. You can make sure you're addressing something that's the way they find it most useful.
One nice addition feature that just came this quarter is you see those toggle buttons. So what we've got displayed here is the default way this dashboard will load. We put you, the dashboard owner, in control of how it initially loads. But if someone is looking at that bottom table and they'd rather see the chart because that's more their learning style or how they want to take it in, it's one click to hit that toggle button to the chart and be able to see it. So just super flexible for those different needs.
Okay, so let's take a look at what this might look for a customer service leader. So a customer service leader, they handle a lot of transactional inquiries and that uses usually a lot of human resources. So they want to know, what of our products or services are driving customer service engagement. What's occupying our reps' time. And then in terms of performance, you might want to know, for good or for bad, what is the average resolution time per rep? Like what reps take a long time or a short time on resolving incidents? And maybe how does that compare to customer satisfaction by those reps? Do we have better customer satisfaction when we take a little bit more time? How does those two things correlate? Those are two things that the service leader has to keep a pretty tight eye on. Then also, in SugarCRM, in our service module, we manage something called case escalations. That means that we have cases like service tickets that we're managing for our customers. And from time to time, there might be something that needs cross-company, cross-organizational focus, and they tend to be escalated tickets where we need to bring a lot of team in. So that's a specific process in a service organization. So we also want to know what's going on with specific processes and have a way of highlighting that. So we're going to take you through some tools to show those things.
You did. Let's go ahead and zoom in on that dashboard. So first, this is looking at Sugar in dark mode. Dark mode is a newer capability. It's super nice, particularly for your night owls, or if you've got 24/7 service professionals, people working the late shift, this can be a boon to their productivity. And on the next slide, you'll see that we're noticing at the bottom that training is a big portion. That bottom center, you can see the training, or the need for training, is generating quite a lot of case volume. So providing more self-service training would be a great way, maybe, to help deflect cases and reduce our service costs. So the next question might be, well, where should we focus? Which products could most benefit from more training materials being made available on our help website? So I can answer that right here by clicking that little icon, the filter, the third of those toggles I was talking about earlier, so that I can further narrow down that chart so that I can see case volume produced by training questions by product. And now I've got an action I can go and take, again, to drive our costs down. And then last but not least, we've been talking a lot about reports, different ways to put reports on dashboards in an aggregated way. But keep in mind that dashboards are not just reports. We have a lot of dashlets at Sugar. So this example is just a simple list of escalations. So these are things that the service leader, while they're monitoring these KPIs, they're looking at medium and long-term gains, ways to attain more revenue and preserve that revenue through cost savings. They also have some day-to-day things they need to take care of. And so keeping in mind that when you're thinking of that persona and what they need to do, you can serve both functions at once. You can have them gaining insight on how to maximize revenue and how to make the business successful while keeping their shorter term processes, the things they need to go and do today, front and center.
Excellent. Thank you, Ellen. And so all these capabilities that we showed you here are all released and available to our customers on SugarCell or SugarCRM in our 12.2 release. So basically all this is current functionality. We did do a little preview of the left-hand navigation that's coming in 12.3 in January, just so that you can get to see that. But everything else is available to all customers on 12.2. Right now, it was released 2 weeks ago, so it's a fairly current release that has this functionality in it. So be on the lookout for that in your implementations. So with that, so Avi, you spoke about some of your approaches and how you set about to do it, some of your learnings on how to deploy things effectively. What results have you experienced? Like what are some of the things that you might advise our customers to look out for? What did you learn and might have learned to do differently over time? You spoke about some of them earlier, but let's kind of conclude out with some of the things that you've learned over this.
So, when you started off with the chart of how you go through the evolution of just having a hero and doing stuff, we were certainly there. We were a good team of smart people who were very capable of going out in the marketplace and doing good things. But not necessarily doing them in a consistent way, not having a good sense of even what people are doing and what works and what doesn't work. Since we started implementing both CRM and internal reports and then dashboards as we evolved, if I had to say where are we now, if I did a self-assessment, which I sort of did since we last spoke, I said we're between 4 and 5. We're between the manage and the optimized stage. That was a really big deal in our evolution as a sales organization. Just being able to have a baseline and a single source of truth was a huge result for us, because it allowed us not just to manage sales numbers, which we all invariably had, but again, even then was always spreadsheets, analysis and things. We were able to get it just on one single screen, quickly look at it, and we could spend time talking about the results, not about how we got there. So establishing a baseline, a single source of truth. The next thing that was really interesting about having those early KPIs meant that our team actually knew what was expected of them. It was really clear through the KPIs here are the early indicators that we're doing the right stuff to reach our long-term strategic goals. And, we have an extremely long sales cycle in what we do. Our sales cycle can last as long as 3 years. So all that upfront work, if you're not measuring it, we weren't really sure we were doing the right stuff and whether we're doing enough of it and whether we needed to course correct. And that sort of brings me to the next part is, having good dashboards and good data meant that we were making data-driven decisions. Business decisions were now not just based purely on guts, but were based on data. And the data allowed us to not only see what's going on, but actually ask deeper questions. And I can tell you those drilled down charts and the drawer opening with more data becomes critical, because not only do you see the dashboard, you see a potential issue or some success, and you want to figure out what the potential issue is or what led to that success. We drill down in our pipeline reviews and various meetings. And then even when we drill down, we can then interact with the data. And then that feeds straight back into as a feedback loop into the overall KPI. Ultimately, that led to consistent growth, both in KPIs and ultimately in sales. And so we've seen a consistent performance of our team that has raised the average. In any sales organization, you have your top performers, you have some of the laggards and the up and comers, and you have sort of the B players that sort of all around the middle. What this has allowed us to do is literally raise the average of everyone and consistently raise the average and set baselines. And we continue to evolve our process, but so far from a business standpoint, it has been a game-changing exercise for our sales organization. And there was a lot of resistance early on, right? Because one of the things that salespeople really resisted was this spotlight on them, that all of a sudden there's a single source of truth and everyone's looking at the same numbers, and oh boy. But people have learned, even down to the sales people on the street and on the ground, this is not a management tool for us. This is a management tool for them. They now are clear on their expectations, and so we come into a meeting. There's clarity whether they're meeting their goals or not meeting the goals, and the conversation isn't about shame on you, or you've done well or you haven't done well. It's really a conversation around, okay, what's the root cause? How do we get better? What do we do well? And from those that are leading the leaderboard, we're having the conversations of, what are the best practices that you're adopting that we can now pass on to the other teams? And sometimes when they can see it on their own, they're making proactive decisions to contact the leaders on the leaderboard and go, what are you doing that's working? Because, I feel like I'm stuck in the mud. So this has been fundamentally a game changer to the way that we operate as a sales organization. And there's nothing haphazard about the way we do business. It's very deliberate. So, that's a little bit of our experience.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. I think that's an excellent result. I think it's an excellent conclusion to this webinar. And so I want to thank you for that, Avi. As I said, thanks again for being a good sport and jumping on camera and and talking with us for a little bit.
Thank you, Chris, for going through that. So I'll start reading these out, and I'm going to try my best to direct them at who I think might be best to answer the question. So the first question I see is, what do you think are the reports most used by your sales managers? And that's directed to you, Avi.
Wow, the reports that we use the most. Well, so first of all, we've created many reports. Not all of our reports land up turning into dashboards. So I want to make sure that we separate the two. What gets used the most, I hate to say it, sales numbers is what everybody ultimately lives and dies by within our organization as a sales organization, right? Our marketing team obviously focuses on the marketing reports that they work on. So first of all, sales numbers by customer, by territory, parsing that out at the different layers is probably the most important thing. We put a lot of emphasis on quote follow-up. We believe if the customer, and we've taken all the time to quote something, and we do a very, very high volume of business. So, in the order of, hundreds of thousands of quotes a year. So we are very judicious about which quotes get followed up on. And then early indicators of influence that drive demand-driven business. So those are sort of the dashboards we use. We use everything from pie charts to tables of data. We run the gambit of pretty much any type of graph. We use, just list view, and sometimes they're matrix reports. I can't say we use one more or less than the other. We try to use the full functionality and features at our hands. And every time I see Sugar developing new functionality, I get excited and nervous.
Cool.
Great. So I have another question that just came in. This might be for somebody within Sugar. Can you have charts in the focus drawer that are linked to the record?
You can. So that's that example I showed. It was a service example, but remember we focus drawered on the account, and then it was showing a history of cases for that particular account. So this is a new capability in 12.2. So if you haven't had it yet, you should hopefully be upgrading soon. And you would go in when you're configuring that dashboard, you pick the chart, and then you're able to say checkbox yes, only show things related to this to a particular record.
Great. So let's see. Next one. What role at Sugar do customers have that typically design these types of reports that we saw?
I can take that one. Typically, a report is done. Anybody can write a report. First of all, the goal is for anybody to be able to write reports. But having said that, some people are scatterbrained, and then you get scatterbrained reports. So it's useful to have a little bit of business analysis involved. That somebody who's a business analyst type is worthwhile. Somebody understands the process, understands data, how the data is organized, and then also has a little bit of visual sense. The ability to create an intuitive report that looks nice and is easily consumable, digestible quickly. So a business analyst with a little bit of sense of design is in my view, the ideal person for that report. So you might find that person anywhere in the organization, really. It could be in the sales organization, could be in IT. It typically it's a person that has a little bit of passion for the reports and how they look and gets excited about that. I count myself as one.
If I could add to that. So in our organization, we have a business applications manager who supports us on Sugar and a few other applications, and he's very much a business analyst. And then there's myself, who's a big champion for Sugar and has also been deployed Sugar. I mean, he and I work collectively together. And I would say whenever you're deploying a set of dashboards or reports, don't have just one person building it, because they may have a perspective, but ask the managers, what do they need to get out of it? Ask the users, how does this look to them? Does it make sense to them? So whoever's building these reports must collaborate with everyone else. I'll say this, you also want to, from our experience, what we made the mistake that we had, a high level set of reports, and then we said everybody can create their own dashboards. And then we landed up with 3,400 dashboards ultimately. And now managing that and cleaning it up and corralling that, it becomes unwieldy. So my advice is, at least what we've learned within our organization, is try to centralize dashboards. And sometimes that you have users who want something specific, but then just go and make it ad hoc, often land up, maybe not getting the right data, not using the right filters, not knowing the system architecture, and might actually develop reports or dashboards that might mislead them into not what they think they're getting. So, and we have some tips and tricks internally on how we build reports, but that's a different topic.
Yeah, a good point. So sometimes it's good to have a team, maybe 2 people with slightly different knowledge, history, to collaborate on the report.
Okay, we've got quite a few more questions coming in, so I'm going to read these and go through them. Okay, are there any plans to expand dashboard capabilities on the Sugar mobile apps? Our sales organizations does a lot of their work in the field using iPads.
I can speak to that. So Sugar Mobile is another product that's in my little umbrella of products. And so I'm thrilled to hear that your sales users use it on their iPads. And yes, we are always adding new dashlets and enhancing the capabilities. That said, if there's different ways that you are wanting to interact with the dashboards holistically, it's something that we're thinking about in the future. So not just adding more dashlets, but changing how you access those. So if that's something you're willing to speak to product about how you would like to see that will be useful, I'd be really open to that conversation. So maybe you can reach out and connect with Sarah afterwards, Mustafa.
And in general, here at Sugar, we do want our mobile users to be able to do anything a desktop user. That is our goal. We have large customer bases in different regions who might have all their users on mobile. So our goal is to have as much or all functionality we can deliver on the mobile. It's not supposed to be a subset.
Definitely.
Okay, next question. Does Sugar have the capability of making a master report where all the data is fed into the report, and depending on what the user wants to see, they can filter the data?
Yep, definitely. So we call this runtime filters versus static filters, or dynamic filters versus static filters. So the report owner is going to set up that base report, and they're going to set a default filter set. But then each individual user who comes and accesses that report has those filters available to further drill or segment down. So let's say I only care about North American sales, Christian's looking at EMEA sales, right? And those filters that each of us are able to control won't change what anyone else can see. They're particular to me. They're sticky to me, my user. And the same is true on the dashboards as well. So whether you're using the full report viewer or using the dashboard, you're able to tweak and see what's relevant to you without changing that master definition.
Okay, next one. What tools are available in Sugar to style dashboards to match client branding, such as colors, logos, fonts?
I can take that one too, if you like.
Go for it.
Today, if you're an admin who wants to click to make these changes, that's going to be an enhancement request. We don't have a lot of capabilities to make those color, logo, or color and font changes without code level customizations. They can be done if you engage with your partner or with Sugar Professional Services to get color changes, font changes. Logo changes, however, you can go and make as an admin. So you go into your admin panel and change the logo. And I think you'll be pleased, for those of you who like to have Sugar logo branded to look like your organization, it's your tool. That logo is actually getting elevated in our redesign. So it used to be on the bottom, and now it's actually going to be at the very top left of the page. So the primary logo in Sugar, starting in January, will be your company's logo.
And that logo is also inserted onto top of every report that's printed or something like that. So if you go into the administration of Sugar, put your logo in there, it'll be placed onto every printed report so that you have a little bit of branding.
Another question, is there any chance for Sugar CRM reports to present data feeded from other applications, for example, an ERP?
I can take that one. In order to do that, you have to integrate the data into Sugar. So most of our kind of mid-market, mid-sized customers integrate data from other systems like Epicor, for instance. So if you want to blend the CRM data specifically onto the report with ERP data, you have to go through an integration process. And we have lots of tools to do that. But typical things that people bring in are invoices, orders, parts, sales orders. Those are, or maybe even summary results from ERP are brought into the CRM system, and then they can be reported on. But they have to be in the CRM database itself to effectively do that.
And so just to speak to that, that's exactly what we did. We integrated our ERP and an outside data source called Dodge Construction Data into our CRM. And so based on that data coming in, that data then meets the sales performance data and the sales interaction data. And those two, when they come together, creates a lot of our dashboards and reports. And we do a lot of roll-ups and things like that. So we have a lot of customizations built, which is one of the reasons we really like Sugar, is that we could build those customizations. But yeah, you have to integrate the data to get the dashboards in Sugar.
That's a great way to give more back to the users than they have to put in, right? So you get them to agree to enter data into Sugar, but in return, you've integrated other data sources to Sugar and give that back to them in the forms of in the user interface or in the reports and dashboards.
I have one other question for you, Avi. How many years experience do you have in deploying dashboards like the ones that we showed throughout the webinar?
We're going to show our age here, Christian. I mean, look, it's been an evolution over the last, 10, 12 years. Certainly at ASI, it's been, I think 8 years of using Sugar. So we've had quite a few years to make a lot of blunders and mistakes. But, start small and build up if you're new to it. And if you're not, just, work on it.
Good.
I think we're getting very close to the hour, so I think I've gone through most of the questions. Special thank you to Avi. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you as well, Christian and Ellen. I think this was really useful and a lot of really good information and best practices. So thank you all, and have a good rest of your day.
And thank you, Sarah, for putting it on, and thank you, everybody, who spent some time with us. So,
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.